Dueling in Harry Potter. It's one of the coolest parts of the series. For this video, I put together a list of 41 duels that we saw throughout the novels and on Pottermore.
You've been taught how to duel, I presume, yes?
So here's the criteria for what it takes to be on this list. We must know at least one character on either side, both must be armed, both must shoot at least one spell, and we must know the outcome of the duel. So obviously with this criteria, I didn't add every single duel, but I think I added every duel that's worth listing. Now just to be clear, this is not going to be the normal duel ranking thing where it's like, oh, this one had the best choreography or this one had the best explosion. No, because this is based on the books and not the movies, spectacle is out and emotion and situational stakes are in. I'm ranking these based on the impact the duel had to the story, the characters, and the situation in which it takes place. That being said though, if it was described as such on the page, the spectacle of how the duel was written will be taken into account, but only if it was written. I don't care what the movie turned it into. Also, I'm not counting video games, nor am I counting the Fantastic Beasts films, because it would just throw the video off. I didn't want to pit movie and game duels against solely book duels. The comparisons are just too different. That being said though this is based on the books, I will be using clips from the movies just to make the video more visually pleasing for you guys. So, let's get into it. Before we get into the video though, I want to thank today's sponsor, Established Titles. This is a company that I've fallen in love with, so I'm so happy to have them as sponsors. Not only did they allow me to have the same title as my favorite Harry Potter character, Lord Voldemort, making me Lord Morgan. I know, cool, right? But they also allowed me to make my fiancée Kara a lady alongside of me. How did we do it? I'm glad you asked. Established Titles is based on a Scottish custom where if you own land in Scotland, you officially become a laird, or in English, a lord or a lady. The company allows literally anyone to buy as little as 1 square foot of land in Scotland, and because you own that land, you automatically become a lord or a lady. And something really cool, the first 200 people to use my link will get a plot next to me, so you can say you're neighbors with Movie Flame. The certificate features a unique plot number, which allows you to see the exact location of your land. This not only makes you look like a boss to your friends and family, but it also helps support global reforestation efforts. Established Titles works with local charities like One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future, and they plant a tree with every single order, so clearly it's a fun way to help preserve the picturesque woodlands of Scotland. And as I said, you don't have to get it for just yourself. I not only made myself a lord, but I also got this for my fiancée Kara, and she said it was one of the coolest and most unique gifts she's ever gotten. Also, with this purchase, you can officially change your name, meaning you could put it on your credit card, your plane ticket, heck, you could even put it on your dating profile if you wanted. What a conversation starter that would be. Established Titles is actually running a massive sale right now. Plus, if you use the code MF10, you get an additional 10% off. Go to establishedtitles.com/MF10 to become a lord or a lady today. Now that I've said that, let's rank some Harry Potter duels. Harry Potter vs. Draco Malfoy, Book 4. Of all the duels on this list, this one has the least amount of stakes. When Harry got angry about the Potter Stinks badges that Malfoy and the other Slytherins were wearing, a duel broke out, but it ended faster than it started. Both Harry and Draco shot spells at the same time, and both missed. Harry's hit Goyle, which made him grow boils all over his face, and Malfoy's hit Hermione, which made her already large buck teeth become even more massive. So yeah, it was a pretty low stakes fight, and nothing really happened to either duelist, so that's why it's last on the list. Gilderoy Lockhart vs. Severus Snape, Book 2. This was another low stakes duel that was merely a demonstration. The only reason it wasn't at the bottom though is because the duel impacted the story, as it made many people realize that Lockhart was a fraud. Aberforth Dumbledore vs. Augustus Rookwood, Book 7. This is one of many short duels that took place during the Battle of Hogwarts. Because Harry had given his life, it put a protective enchantment on all of those fighting by his side, and the good guys started taking the Death Eaters down left and right, and this duel probably had the least amount of impact. Aberforth took Rookwood down, but did not kill him. Simple as that. George Weasley and Lee Jordan vs. Corbin Yaxley, Book 7. This is another duel at the end of the final battle, and again, it's just Lee and George defeating the Death Eater Yaxley, but I put it ahead of Aberforth's duel as I took into account the emotion George was feeling during the fight, as he had just lost his twin brother mere hours before this. Minerva McGonagall vs. Electo Caro, Book 6. This is another quick battle, but this time it was during the Battle of the Astronomy Tower in the 6th book. This duel was more exciting than the other quick ones because it ended with Electo running and McGonagall yelling after him triumphantly. This really shows how badass McGonagall is. Phileas Flitwick vs. Antonin Dolohov, Book 7. This is yet another quick duel, but this one was extra satisfying. Flitwick knocked him down from great heights, and it was implied that the fall killed him. This was revenge for Dolohov killing so many people, including Fabian and Gideon, Molly Weasley's brothers, Remus Lupin, and a few other murders mentioned throughout the series that were described as brutal. So it's safe to say he kind of got what was coming for him. Also, this marks the first duel on this list that ends in a death. Bellatrix Lestrange versus the Snatchers, Book 7. This duel was just one of many examples that show how strong Bellatrix is. She took all the Snatchers as well as Greyback down with ease. They only got 2 spells off before they were beaten. The reason it's so low on the list though was because the fight was very one-sided. There were no real stakes. Bellatrix was always going to win, which sort of took the excitement out of the otherwise very thrilling duel. Hermione Granger, Ginny Weasley, and Luna Lovegood versus Bellatrix Lestrange, Book 7. This was another quick one at the end of the Battle of Hogwarts, but it was much more meaningful than the others because it almost took Ginny's life. Bellatrix's killing curse just barely missed her, and the Weasleys almost lost a second child that night. Also, this duel set up one of the most epic duels in the whole series, but we'll get to that later. Bellatrix Lestrange versus Kingsley Shacklebolt, Book 5. Another quick one, but ultimately, once again, the fight showed the strength of Bellatrix as she made the very powerful Kingsley fall to the ground screaming in agony. Augusta Longbottom versus John Dawlish, Book 7. This is a duel in a sequence that often gets overlooked, and honestly, more people need to be talking about it. To make Neville stop rebelling at Hogwarts, Dawlish was sent to capture his grandmother to get him to comply. When he got there though, he got his ass handed to him, as Augusta beat him so badly he ended up in St. Mungo's hospital. She then went on the run and was never captured, eventually coming to help Neville in the Battle of Hogwarts. Augusta Longbottom is a legend, and needs more praise if you ask me. Alistair Moody versus Evan Rosier, before Book 1. This duel had some excitement as Rosier took a chunk out of Moody's nose, which was a big part of what made Mad-Eye look like the Mad-Eye Harry would later come to know. The duel ended with Moody striking back and killing Rosier, making this the second duel that ended in a death on the list. Harry Potter versus Draco Malfoy, Book 2. Though this duel was only in the second book, it was a long time coming. Harry and Draco had been at odds before they even made it to Hogwarts, because in the book they had their first meeting while in the Hogwarts Express. After the midnight duel in the first book didn't happen, this was it. This was when Harry and Draco would finally go toe-to-toe in a duel, and it did not disappoint, both getting some good shots in. Ron Weasley and Neville Longbottom versus Fenrir Greyback, Book 7. This was another one of those quick duels at the end of the final battle, but this one had some more meaning as Ron helped defeat and got revenge on the man that permanently scarred his older brother Bill the year before that. Bellatrix and Rodolphus Lestrange versus Nymphadora Tonks and Ron Weasley, Book 7. This was a duel during the Battle of Seven Potters, and we see some big blows on both sides. Tonks injured Bellatrix's husband Rodolphus, and when another Death Eater came to help them, Ron stunned him right in the face. But the big thing to take away from this duel was Bellatrix's desperate pursuit of her niece Nymphadora, as she was trying her very hardest to kill her, all to please her master Lord Voldemort, who had told her to do so during the Death Eater meeting. Nymphadora Tonks versus Bellatrix Lestrange, Book 5. Moving on from their second meeting to their first meeting, we have their duel during the Battle of the Department of Mysteries. This was the first time the aunt and niece ever met, and Bellatrix immediately hated her for being a stain on the pureblood Black family, as her father was a Muggle-born. This anger drove Bellatrix, and she knocked Nymphadora unconscious. The Golden Trio, aka Harry, Ron, and Hermione, versus the Bronze Trio, aka Malfoy, Crabbe, and Goyle, Book 7. We've seen the Golden Trio and the Bronze Trio be at odds many times throughout the series, but there was never a duel or a fight that met my requirements for this list. That is, until the final book, when all of that buildup comes down to one final fight with very high stakes. They're fighting to the death as they fire off killing curses. Ultimately, the duel led to a spread of fiend fire that took Goyle's life. Though in the film it was Crabbe, not Goyle, but again, this is based on the books. And on top of that, though this wasn't the outcome expected when the duel started, it actually destroyed one of Voldemort's Horcruxes, so it had huge repercussions, some good and some bad. Remus Lupin and George Weasley versus Severus Snape and the Death Eaters, Book 7. This was another duel that took place during the Battle of Seven Potters, and this had huge repercussions as well, as Snape hit George in the ear, making him permanently earless on one side. However, this duel could have its name changed to Lupin, George, and Snape versus the Death Eaters, because Snape cast that spell trying to hit another Death Eater who was about to kill Lupin, but he missed and hit George instead. Emeric the Evil versus Egbert the Egregious, before Book 1. This one was groundbreaking because it was the first time someone defeated a wizard who was the master of the Elder Wand. Egbert defeated and killed Emeric in a duel that would forever go down in history. Harry Potter vs. Severus Snape, Book 6. This was another emotional duel, as Harry had just seen Snape kill Dumbledore. He again tried to use the torture curse, this time on Snape, and many other spells as well, but Snape blocked them all with ease, almost toying with Harry. However, Snape's demeanor changed immediately when he called Snape a coward.
Fight back! You coward, fight back!
He roared at Harry, telling him not to call him that. He was anything but a coward, risking his life every day to protect Harry. But at this point in time, he obviously could not tell Harry that. The duel then ended with one of the most insane plot twists, as Snape says,
"I'm the Half-Blood Prince,"
which was just the icing on the cake for this great duel. Harry Potter vs. Draco Malfoy, Book 6. This duel was pretty shocking for obvious reasons. What's interesting about this duel is that throughout the novel, Harry trusted the Half-Blood Prince without question. He did and tried whatever the prince said to do in his notes. That is, until this very duel where he almost killed Malfoy because of the prince. This duel shifted the narrative in a way that made Harry distrust the prince, when it had been the complete opposite up until this point. The Trio vs. Antonin Dolohov and Thorfinn Rao, Book 7. The final book took the trio out of their element. They were no longer safe and sound at Hogwarts, and this duel was the start of that. When this duel went down, it showed both the trio and the audience that they were in the real world, and it was dangerous. They face off against real Death Eaters fighting for their lives. The trio just barely came out on top, and it set the stage for the danger to come. Harry Potter vs. Bellatrix Lestrange, Book 5. This duel took place right after Bellatrix killed Sirius, and this one is monumental as it was the first time Harry ever tried to use an unforgivable curse. He hit Bellatrix with the torture curse, his anger and sorrow taking over. It ultimately didn't work very well because, as Bellatrix said, you need to really mean them. Following that though, the two exchanged words and spells, narrowly missing each other multiple times. Alistair Moody vs. Antonin Dolohov, Book 5. This is one of those duels that makes your jaw drop. Moody was the best Auror the Ministry had ever seen. Half the cells in Azkaban were full thanks to him, and he never lost. Sure, he took some punishment like losing an eye and a leg, losing pieces of his face, and getting PTSD. Jeez, he's really been through it. But anyway, he always got the job done and always came out on top. That's why this duel is so shocking. During the Battle of the Department of Mysteries, Moody lost his duel with Dolohov. He was knocked unconscious and hit so hard that his magical eye flew out. He lay in a pool of his own blood as his eye rolled away from him. It was like seeing the undefeated and unstoppable champion get knocked out for the first time, and it was a huge blow and a huge reality check for the Order of the Phoenix. If Moody can go down, any of them can too. Arthur and Percy Weasley vs. Pius Thicknesse, Book 7. This duel was one of those short ones at the end of the final battle, but this one has so much deeper meaning. Arthur and Percy had a rough patch, as Percy turned on his father and family to work for the Ministry, taking the Ministry side over his own family. Then, fast forward to this duel, Pius Thicknesse was the current Minister of Magic fighting for Voldemort, and he was going up against the newly reconciled Arthur and Percy. Together in fighting and defeating Thicknesse, they were essentially standing together to take the Ministry down, the thing that they now both know was the right thing to do and what they should have done from the start. This duel is a metaphor for a father and son making up and fighting side by side against the very thing that split them apart. Harry Potter vs. Lord Voldemort, Book 7, Duel 1. This duel that took place during the Battle of Seven Potters broke the laws of the Wizarding World. First of all, Voldemort flew publicly for the first time, which perplexed everyone. And for those who have only seen the movies, you see everyone flying, both good and bad. But in the books, no one had that power except two people, one of which was Voldemort. But going back to this duel, another crazy thing happened. Harry's wand did something that no one could explain, not even the two most gifted wand makers Ollivander and Gregorovitch. Without casting a spell or even lifting his own hand, Harry's wand acted of its own accord, recognizing Voldemort as an enemy and shooting golden fire at him. And this made the wand Voldemort was using completely break apart. Minerva McGonagall, Phileas Flitwick, Pomona Sprout, and Horace Slughorn vs. Severus Snape, Book 7. In the film, this was just McGonagall versus Snape, but in the book, it was a 4-on-1 duel, and when Snape began to lose, he did what only one other person had done up until this point. He flew just as Voldemort had, which that in itself makes this duel noteworthy. Another reason why this duel is ranked as high as it is though, is because of its meaning. The 4 heads of houses take back Hogwarts, which for the last year had been run by Voldemort and his Death Eaters. This fight was the first step to protecting the students, and it was also the first real duel in the Battle of Hogwarts, one of, if not the most epic battle in Wizarding World history. Harry Potter, Ron Weasley, and Dobby versus Bellatrix Lestrange, Fenrir Greyback, and the Malfoys, Book 7. This duel was a roller coaster of a ride. First, Ron and Harry run in to save a weakened and tortured Hermione. We then see Harry blast Greyback with 3 wands at once, though in the film it was Lucius, but either way, we had never seen someone use 2, much less 3 wands at the same time. Then Bellatrix changed everything as she held a knife to Hermione's throat.
Stop! Drop your wands. I said drop him!
This duel also houses the moment where Harry becomes the master of the Elder Wand when disarming Draco, something that is monumental to the series and is of course what allowed Harry to beat Voldemort in the end. After that, we get an even bigger turn of events as Dobby arrives to save the day, drops a chandelier, gives his incredible free house elf speech,
Dobby is a free elf.
and gets the heroes out. As we know though, the battle was costly. Dobby gave his life in the end to save Harry and his friends. Remus Lupin vs. Antonin Dolohov, Book 7. Remus Lupin was so many people's favorite character, and he had finally found happiness. After years of being pushed aside due to his sickness, he finally found love, had a baby, and started a family. That's why this duel is so devastating. As soon as he got a perfect life, he was gone. Leading up to the duel, Lupin had not been in the field much as he was taking care of his family, so he was very rusty. Dolohov took advantage of that, and he defeated and killed Remus. Bellatrix Lestrange vs. Nymphadora Tonks, Book 7. Moving on from Remus's death, we have his wife Nymphadora's. This duel was highly anticipated by Bellatrix, and during the Battle of Hogwarts, the aunt and niece met for the 3rd time, and this time, Tonks would not make it out. I put this one above Lupin's because 1, it was a long time coming, this being their 3rd meeting, and 2, because Lupin died first. So that meant that this duel where Tonks died was what made their son Teddy Lupin become an orphan. James Potter and Sirius Black vs. Severus Snape, before Book 1, but also technically in the 5th book because we saw it in a flashback there. But this duel changes the series forever, especially for the character Snape, as this scene was entitled Snape's Worst Memory. James and Sirius pretty much attacked Snape out on the grounds of Hogwarts, and Snape got a few shots in as well, even slicing James's face. This duel led to Snape's anger reaching an all-time high, and when Lily intervened, the girl that Snape had loved for years, instead of thanking her, he called her a mudblood, the worst thing you can call a Muggleborn. This ended any relationship Snape had or could have had with Lily, and from then on, Snape was a broken man. Without this duel, it makes you wonder how things could have gone. Lily might not have gotten together with James if she was still friends with Severus, Harry might never have been born, and who knows, maybe Snape would have ended up with Lily. Doubtful though. But the possibilities that this duel put forth were endless. The Ministry of Magic versus the Death Eaters, Book 4. The Death Eaters hadn't been seen or heard from in well over a decade, so that's why this duel was so shocking. Death Eaters showed up at the Quidditch World Cup, this huge wizarding event where 75% of the wizarding community was. It horrified people because it brought them back to the First Wizarding War. Looking at the battle itself, it was a pretty huge fight as many ministry workers go up against a whole group of Death Eaters. The thing that made this battle so disturbing though was what the Death Eaters did to the Muggle campsite owners. They levitated the whole family in the air, including the kids, and then flipped the mother over so her dress would reveal her underwear, and they all laughed with approval. Fabian and Gideon Pruitt versus Antonin Dolohov and other Death Eaters, before Book 1. Fabian and Gideon Pruitt were Molly Weasley's twin brothers. They were members of the Order of the Phoenix during the First Wizarding War, and one day they were attacked by 5 Death Eaters, one of which was Antonin Dolohov. The duel was long and epic. Order members later said the brothers fought like heroes, but in the end, the battle ended with both of them dying a brutal death. Alice and Frank Longbottom versus Barty Crouch Jr. and Bellatrix, Rodolphus, and Sebastian Lestrange, before Book 1. This duel was shocking. Alice and Frank were attacked by the 4 Death Eaters, and they fought them off at first, but ultimately the side with more people prevailed. Barty Jr. and the Lestranges then spent the next few hours using the torture curse on them, and not getting what they wanted, which was information about what happened to Voldemort after his first fall. They just kept going and going and going. After hours of enduring the Cruciatus curse, they had been tortured into madness. They didn't know who they were, didn't know who their son Neville was, and they had no grip on reality. It honestly would have been better if they had just died that day, but instead, they spent the rest of their lives in the memory ward at St. Mungo's Hospital. Kingsley Shacklebolt, Minerva McGonagall, and Horace Slughorn vs. Lord Voldemort, Book 7. This battle is ranked here for 2 reasons. 1, it showed how strong Voldemort is, which I feel like a lot of people question. He's fighting possibly the 2 most powerful professors at Hogwarts, as well as one of the most skilled Aurors all at once, and they still can't take him down. But reason number 2 is what makes it really clear that this one belongs in the top 10, and it's all because of Slughorn. This was Slughorn's time for redemption. He and Voldemort once had a very close relationship, so that in itself houses a ton of emotion. On top of that, Slughorn knows he messed up and helped Voldemort find out about Horcruxes, and this was his time to strike back against the boy who had used and manipulated him. Ultimately, this did not go as planned though, because the sight of Bellatrix's death made Voldemort scream and throw Kingsley, Minerva, and Slughorn back several feet. Albus and Aberforth Dumbledore vs. Gellert Grindelwald, before Book 1. This duel has a lot of importance as it changed Dumbledore's life forever. After neglecting his younger siblings Aberforth and Ariana, whom he was supposed to be caring for, Aberforth confronted the person taking his older brother's time away from him. Challenging Gellert Grindelwald was a mistake though, as he began to duel Aberforth. Albus of course had feelings for Gellert, but he took the side of his younger brother. Soon though, the duel got very out of hand, and as their younger sister Ariana screamed, she was hit by a spell that took her life. The 3 boys never knew whose spell had killed her, but Albus always assumed it was his, and he had to live with that guilt for the rest of his life.
One minute she was there, and the next she was gone.
After this duel, he abandoned everything he had done with Grindelwald, and he moved on with his life, a changed and slightly broken man who had lost both his sister and the man he loved. Chadwick, Webster, Azolt, and William vs. Gormlaith Gaunt, before Book 1. This was a duel that took place at Ilvermorny, the American Wizarding School. Gormlaith went there to kill her niece Azolt, her muggle husband who had tainted their pureblood line, destroy Ilvermorny, and kidnap their twin girls to raise them right with the dark arts. What Gormlaith didn't know though was that her niece had adopted 2 young boys, Chadwick and Webster, both of whom met the evil witch outside and began to duel. Because the boys had matching wand cores, their power was increased tenfold, making them an equal match with Gormlaith. Azolt then joined the duel, but even with all 3 of them, Gormlaith fought her way into the school. When she got to the twin girls though, the pugwudgie named William, a former friend of Azolt, showed up and he shot Gormlaith with a poison arrow right in the heart, which killed her. This was quite the fight with a lot of twists and turns, and it's of course legendary when looking at the history and lore of the American Wizarding School. Molly Weasley vs. Bellatrix Lestrange, Book 7. I mentioned this duel earlier in the video, and here it is, ranking in the top 5. It just had to be here because it's such a memorable and game-changing duel with so much emotion. Molly had just lost Fred, she thought she had lost Harry, who was basically one of her own and who in the book had not yet revealed himself to be alive, and on top of all of that, she just watched Bellatrix almost take her only daughter from her.
Not my daughter, you bitch!
Bellatrix mocked Molly during the fight, asking her what the rest of her kids would do when she was killed just like Fred. All of this emotion and anger drove Molly, and the last person we expected to take the almighty Bellatrix down did just that. Harry Potter vs. Lord Voldemort, Book 7, Duel 2. Having made all of his Horcruxes, Lord Voldemort thought he would live forever, but he met his doom in this duel. We're just gonna ignore the movie's battle because it's completely different. In the book, Voldemort dies in a much better way, as he and Harry duel in the middle of the Great Hall with everyone watching. Harry humiliates Voldemort, explaining every detail of how and why he failed. Then Voldemort looked even more foolish, as the Elder Wand that he thought he was the master of flew in the air and went to its true master. Voldemort's body then fell, dying a completely ordinary, non-remarkable, very human death, the thing that he feared more than anything. This duel wrapped up the series perfectly, and it made it clear that Voldemort was not this sentient being, a plot point that the filmmakers sort of overlooked and sort of contradicted, also they could have some cool CGI. Albus Dumbledore vs. Lord Voldemort, Book 5.
It was foolish of you to come here tonight, Tom. The orders are on their way.
By which time I shall be gone, and you shall be dead.
As amazing as this duel was in the film, it's even better in the book. It's not often that the spectacle of a fight is better on the page than on the big screen, but it really was. On top of everything we saw in the film, we also read about the statues that were in the middle of the Ministry coming to life, both helping Dumbledore in his battle against Voldemort and holding Harry and Bellatrix back. Dumbledore was the only man Voldemort ever feared, and he had spent years trying to avoid this very situation. Obviously though, as time ran out, and it led to one of the most exciting and exhilarating duels in the entire series. Albus Dumbledore versus Gellert Grindelwald, before Book 1. This duel was so legendary that it was dubbed the most legendary duel of all time. There are so many things to highlight in this. Dumbledore of course defeated Grindelwald, while Grindelwald was the master of the Elder Wand, which made the Elder Wand then be loyal to Dumbledore, and Albus became just the second person in history to ever do this. Then we have to look at the emotional stakes of this duel, which are so high. Leading up to this, Dumbledore had put off this fight for years, waiting way too long to take Grindelwald down, even when the entire Wizarding World was begging him to do so, all because he did not want to fight the love of his life. On top of that, Dumbledore later admitted that he was scared to face Gellert because he was afraid to find out he was the one who killed his sister Ariana during their first duel. There was so much emotion, so much passion, and so much raw power on both sides, which made for one hell of a face-off. And finally, number 1, Harry Potter vs. Lord Voldemort, Book 4. This is the best duel in the Harry Potter series. First of all, Harry's bravery was on full effect when deciding to face Voldemort. This duel is also number 1 because of how unique it is. We had never seen anything like it, and we never would again. The duel triggered Priori Incantatem because both of their wand cores were taken from Fawkes the Phoenix. This made so many interesting things happen in the book. First, the two were lifted in the air, still in the heat of battle. Then when they landed, a yellow dome formed around them, making it just the two of them. Priori Incantatem then triggered the sound of Phoenix Song, which was actually Fawkes himself singing, brought forth by their matching wand cores. And most of all, this duel brought back the dead, if only for a few minutes. Voldemort's most recent victims, including Harry's parents, come out of his wand, and Harry is actually able to interact with his real parents. That in itself makes this duel worthy of the spot, not to mention everything else I listed. The ending of this duel is also extremely unique, as the duel goes from Harry versus Voldemort to Harry, Lily, James, Cedric, Frank Bryce, and Bertha Jorkins against Voldemort. They help Harry win the duel and escape, while also getting their own sort of revenge as they sort of gang tackle him. This duel is just so eventful and so unique, which is why I had to put it at number 1 on this list. And there it is, all 41 duels ranked from worst to best. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of my ranking. Do you agree? Do you disagree? I'd love to hear your thoughts. That's all I have for you guys today though, so I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. You can follow me on Instagram to see more of my personal life, like my cute dog Loki, and some behind the scenes movie flame stuff. I also do similar content on TikTok and Twitter that I do here on this channel, so if you like what I do here, check them out. All the handles are right below me, and links are in the description. Over here are my wonderful patrons. If you want to be featured on the next video, plus get a few other perks, become a patron today. As always, if you liked the video, hit that like button and subscribe, and look out for more great movie flame videos on the way.